Hello, and thank you for checking into the Neutral Zone Hotel, an unapologetically left-leaning podcast exploring hockey at its best and worst. My name is John, my pronouns are he, him, and I'm so pleased to welcome you to the Neutral Zone Hotel. Here to ensure your stay is a memorable one are a few of my colleagues. Trevor?
Hey everybody, it's Trevor, pronouns are he, him, the hometown Vancouver Canucks fan. I don't really have a bit because the Canucks are depressing and it kind of sucks, and by kind of I mean very much so.
Alex?
Hi, I'm Alex. My pronouns are she, her. And I am the resident Pittsburgh Penguins fan. Penguins are also depressing, but that's fine. Because the Penguins weren't the team that sent away a first-round pick in the trade between the Penguins and the Canucks. So,
yeah, you're welcome. Actually, this is the first time we've been able to talk since that trade. So, yeah, you're welcome. Handshake.
handshake.
And we have a special guest this week. Liz, want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Liz. I'm here because I'm John's wife.
Yay!
That's not true.
It's partially true. But also, conveniently enough, we both went to a hockey game together this week. So that's what we're here to talk about. Or what I'm here to talk about. Oh, and my pronouns are she, her.
Excellent. She understands. She knows how this works.
Yeah, shambolic intro as always.
I feel like it was pretty good, all things considered. We've done worse. We didn't trip up on unapologetically.
So you've just cursed yourself by trying to say
I really
it again.
did. But I'm not the one doing the intro, so it doesn't matter.
It's true. That's true. And we can edit this all out.
No. Keep this in. This is funny.
So yes, this week the PWHL Takeover Tour visited Buffalo, and Liz and I went to the game, and we're going to talk about that first.
Yeah, very excited. Because personally, this is the first of the Takeover Tour games that I've missed watching. I was away at a convention at the time, so very excited to hear your guys' perspective.
And I have to, before we get into the game, I have to rant a little bit about. I knew this was going to happen. So the attendance at the game was 8,512 people, which is considerably less than the other Takeover Tour games this year. And so, of course, that means we get headlines like this from the Daily Face-Off. No show in Buffalo. Sunday's game between the Boston Fleet and the New York Sirens was a chippy affair that saw all-world goaltending performances between Aaron Frankel and Kaylee Osborne, with Boston winning 3-2 in a shootout. It's also the latest in the PWHL's Takeover Tour, with teams playing neutral site games at various NHL arenas in North America. This week, the Fleet and Sirens played at KeyBank Center in Buffalo, New York, home of the NHL's Buffalo Sabres. The announced attendance for the game was 8,512, which, if you compare it to other Takeover Tour games we've seen this season, is a big disappointment.
Hey,
And it goes on to say a bunch of other stuff. While a number of factors could go into the lackluster attendance figure, in a season where the PWHL is looking where potential expansion markets could flourish, seeing chunks of empty seats in an NHL arena's lower bowl might leave a bad taste in the league's mouth. Fuck you.
I'm sorry. Have they seen the Prudential Center?
Yeah, like you know what team has a empty lower bowl seats in an NHL arena? Every New York Sirens home game this year. Their average attendance is 2,649. And they had an attendance record of 4,000 plus this year, which means some of those games had about 1,500 people in them, which, if you're counting, is about 500 more than what the Buffalo Beauts used to draw to a practice rink in one of the northern suburbs in Buffalo. I would also like to point out that was like a whole 300 people less than what Pittsburgh drew last year. And Pittsburgh has twice as many people as Buffalo. We got about 1.1 million people in the metro area here. Pittsburgh's got 2.4. I mean, Seattle drew over 12,000 people. There's 4 million people there. Denver got 14. There's 3 million people there. I mean, there's a hell of a lot more people in all of these places.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, sure, would we have liked to see the lower bowl full? Yeah, but we still beat average attendance in the PWHL and more than the averages of like 4 of the league's teams, including those in Minnesota and Boston.
I mean, hell, you beat the average attendance of both teams in the game, so really, you can't see too much. I mean, yeah, ultimately, it's disappointing if you want to, like, base it off, like, the stats, because it's not going to look good in that sense, but, like, it's still a decently attended game, and from what I've also seen online, advertising for the game itself wasn't very good in terms of it being in Buffalo. Like, I saw a lot of people being like, oh, I didn't even realize it was there this time, or today, or this weekend. So that feels like a big swing and a miss on partially the league's behalf, but also Buffalo. Like, I'm sure the Sabres could have done things to advertise, and just, like, the city itself. Like, if you want to fill the building, if you want to get some money flowing through it, like, you got to spend a little bit. You got to make something happen here. But I digress.
But having got that out of my system, let's talk more positively about our experience at the game.
Yeah.
So, Liz, what were your impressions of the PWHL?
Oh, well, do you want to, I mean, is this where I'm going to talk about the PWHL generally, or is this where I'm supposed to be positive?
Column A, column B.
In general, I thought the experience was great. It was really nice because we've seen Butts games before, and they were at Harbor Center, which is, like small practice rink kind of size. Like, there's like bleacher seating. It's not really like meant to hold a crowd. So it was really neat to see a game, like a women's hockey game, in the NHL arena. I thought the atmosphere was great. It really felt just like any other, professional hockey game that we've gone to see. Like the in-arena production was like exactly the same as a Sabres game. Like, it was like, they didn't skimp on any of that. I thought it was great. And the atmosphere was really good. Lots of families, probably more women in the crowd than like a normal hockey game, but I mean, still pretty mixed crowd. It wasn't a lot. It wasn't like only women there or so.
I mean, and that's kind of what you like to see. You like to see that even men can appreciate just good hockey all around.
Yeah.
And I think that's very similar to all of our experiences as well, like SJ's in Seattle, mine in Vancouver, Benjamin at every Ottawa game. So.
Yeah, the presentation was interesting because it was very Sabres. So I mean, it was advertised as a New York Sirens home game, and it was mostly the Sirens got the home game treatment. They got the goal horn, the goal songs, and all that sort of thing. It was Sirens highlights during the period breaks. Kind of in the intros, it was more, hey, welcome to PWHL and welcome both teams. But like other than kind of in the intros, it was very Siren centric. But it was very Sabres. It's very like you could tell it was the Sabres crew working the game. It was like the same music that they play and all that kind of stuff. But they did have some others. Like they had a DJ doing sets during the breaks, which they don't normally have at Sabres games because, they've got a lot of advertising time to fill. Mm-hmm. So instead they had...
Well, they do have usually like a local music. Like usually during that time during Sabres games, they have like a local band playing.
Ooh,
at least the last few times we've...
That is true. I'd forgotten about
I feel
that.
like the DJ... I mean, I think she understood the crowd well, though.
Oh, good.
And it was... I mean, like, I think she played stuff for the kids a lot, So I think that got the kids into it, for sure.
Yeah, that's good to hear, because based off the last report we got, Edmonton kind of dropped the ball on that one. But just...
Yeah, I think they definitely did a good job with keeping the kids engaged.
Mm-hmm. It does make me realize just how spoiled I might have been by getting what seems to be the only true neutral site game. But when I was thinking about it, it made more sense as I think about it, because, like, Toronto, I guess, was the designated home team for my game, and, like, there's always been a lot of Toronto fans. But if you're going to try and ask the city of Vancouver to cheer against Marie-Philippe Poulin, we remember 2010. We do not forget. Good luck ever getting us to cheer against it, or against her and her team. So I'm glad at least Vancouver treated it as such. But, and so I did take occasional peeks at the box score. It was a pretty back and forth game from what I had seen. Like, New York opens the scoring, Boston ties it, New York takes the lead again, Boston ties it. assuming I'm right, unless it was like a 2-0, but I know New York jumped out to an early lead before, I believe, Boston won it in the shootout, correct?
Yeah, they traded goals up until the shootout win.
So for me, I mean, I haven't been watching the PWHL this season, so I'm really not familiar with either of these teams. The interesting thing for me watching it was I expected kind of Boston the players to kind of, some of them to stand out more, and they really kind of just, I couldn't really pick out any of the players. They just kind of like faded. Like they were just kind of there. Mm-hmm. Whereas New York, there were several players who really stood out to me, and I noticed who they were. I remembered who they were. I saw how they were playing, and oh, there's another scrum. Oh, it's that player again. And I feel like it was weird. I don't know if this is normal for Boston, but I feel like by the third period, they looked kind of tired. Like they looked like they were out of gas, and New York looked like they were still going. And I was kind of surprised to see that. And then, of course, New York, I felt like they played more chippy, and Boston wasn't quite keeping up with them in that respect either. But I don't know that it really helps them in the end. So,
yeah, especially too, because I know New York's been on a bit of a skid, but they did just get Alex Carpenter back because she and Sarah Philly together have been a fantastic duo. But as soon as one of them went out, New York's play completely just dumpstered, and it hasn't fully regained itself yet. And then Boston's also been decently hot as of late, so maybe just unlucky result for the Sirens. But did either of you two have a rooting interest, or were you just there? Were you just like the people in the crowd holding a sign saying, "I just hope both teams have fun"?
I wasn't rooting for either team. I plan to just watch and see, but I think he had a rooting interest.
I was cheering for the Sirens just because they were the home team, and that was probably about half the arena was cheering for the Sirens, and there was a very vocal about quarter arena's worth of Boston fans, and then I think everybody else was kind of just enjoying the game. And
I thought it was slightly more evenly divided between Boston and New York fans, slightly more. But also, one of the players on Boston is actually from Niagara Falls, so she's kind of like hometown girl.
Yeah.
But then also, the Sirens had someone from Ontario just across the border, so they also they gave her the hometown treatment too.
Mm-hmm.
She got the after game interview.
Yeah,
I've noticed that's the one thing that these takeover tours are really trying to emphasize and be like, hey, thank you for coming to our game. Here's players that you can focus on that are from here to cheer for. Hey, you like these people? Yeah. Follow them. You want to keep following them? You want to keep watching us?
Yeah, and that's good. I mean, as much as I would have rather seen Montreal for, I think, obvious reasons, I think that's the right choice, bringing in, a player who's from here.
Yeah. Well, plus two, like Montreal's already had 4 takeover tour games, which is more than most of the league. Like they're done. They can have a break. Like I remember looking at the schedule earlier this year. Out of the 9 games, it's a very interesting distribution because 2 teams get 4 games, if I remember correctly. It's either just Montreal or 2 of them get 4.
The Sharks get 4 as well.
Okay, but then only 2 teams get 2 of them, which also weird because I figured maybe try and go 3.
The Sirens and Scepters only get 2 each. The Victoire is a bit more noticeable since they were front loaded. You had the first 4 games all featured them: Seattle, Vancouver, Denver, and QC, and then it's a mix and match for the last 5.
Yeah, it was interesting. I think, especially too, I think it kind of made sense to have Montreal doing those ones because you don't want to send all the teams or like a whole lot of teams out in like a western swing in that sense. So it made sense to at least kind of have one stay out there. But yeah, unfortunately, as you said, it does kind of make it a little hard when one team is just front loaded, so you can't really have a nice even spacing out. But after this, I think we've got only 3 more takeover games left, if I recall correctly. It's Raleigh, St. Louis, and
Detroit.
Was it? Okay, Detroit. I knew it's either Detroit or Pittsburgh has the second one, and I always blank that it's Detroit.
Yep.
Sweet. But overall, good time.
Yeah, I think it was a really good time.
Yeah, I enjoyed it
Sweet.
overall.
That's all we can
I
hope.
do have to give the scene report though before we move on. So it was interesting seeing the jerseys in the crowd. So when we're walking around the concourse, I mean the largest contingent was of course people with Sabres gear. And then after that was people wearing Buttes gear.
Nice.
And then Sirens, Fleet, and Victoire. There were
Hell yeah.
a bunch of people with Victoire jerseys.
To be fair, it's a great jersey. He says
no,
a great
it is.
jersey while wearing one.
There was that one guy in a Charged jersey.
But what was I guess the nice other frequent question we have is what was the merch available?
So
like?
and so I'm getting to that.
Okay.
And so they had some Takeover Tour shirts. I bought one. It's actually in this room, but I can't get to it right now. But it has a nice picture of the electric tower from downtown on it.
Yeah.
There was another one with a. Oh, here we go.
Ooh.
So everybody in podcast land, you can't see this, but this is a cool shirt.
Ooh, that is cool.
I bought the sweatshirt, which had a buffalo on it.
The logo on that is so much bigger than the ones that like Vancouver was just like a strip along like the top there, and so I kind of figured that was the norm. No, that was so much better.
And there's one with a sweatshirt with a buffalo on it that Liz bought, and there was another shirt with a downtown skyline that was a short sleeve. But they also had team gear. They had Sirens jerseys and Fleet jerseys. By the time people finished like rating the merch line and popped their new gear on, it was Sabres, Sirens, Fleet, then the Buttes, and a ton of people bought jerseys and they were putting them on in the concourse and came in for both teams.
Awesome.
So that was pretty cool.
I'm glad that they learned from other takeovers and that they brought their merch. And I hope that we can see it at the rest of the three, that, you know, those three locations be like, hey, maybe we should order stuff in. People might want this.
And they were also selling game used pucks. I don't know how they were doing it though, because they had to sign up at the merch before the game. But obviously they don't have pucks, so I guess they were just letting people know they could queue up after and get them. But
that's so cool. Oh, if that was available in Vancouver, it would have been their front and center. Oh.
They also had hats and pins, I think. Was that it?
yeah, hats and pins and maybe one or two other things.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
But the merch was stocked pretty well.
That's good. Very good to hear.
So before we move on, do you have any final thoughts about the game, Liz?
Wow. Is this where I complain about the PWHL?
Sure.
Going back to the Buttes thing and the Buttes people in the crowd, I definitely saw at least one sign saying, hey, bring a franchise back to Buffalo. And part of the reason why I'm not really following the PWHL at all is because we used to have a team here and we don't anymore. And kind of, if you want me to care about your league, don't take away my team.
Yeah, I understand. It's I'd imagine for a few of those markets, it still sucks. And even then, I kind of wonder for the ones that like had one existing for a while, like if fans in Boston kind of still wish they were the Pride, if fans in Minnesota wish they were the Whitecaps, etc. Like,
yeah, it's the sort of thing where it's really great that this league is on what appears to be stable footing, that it's for the first time in an extremely long time, maybe ever, something that looks like a sustainable women's league. But god damn, was that start, that initial formation of the league messy. And that's just going to echo until a few years down the line when you're feeling confident in that second wave of expansion and you're able to match the old teams with the markets.
And then to also announcing, like when they first said the teams weren't going to have names, a lot of people were like, well, why don't you just use the existing ones? And it just sounded like a child with their toy taken away, or like clutching onto their toy, being like, "No, this is mine. You can't have it. I don't want your germs all over this."
Yeah.
Ew.
The
A very, very spoiled brat.
the fact that the leadership was so anti its predecessor league as just a concept to even consider those options. Like, they still have the rights. They still have the rights to the Whitecaps, the Buttes, the Pride, because they bought the league wholesale. They're just never going to use them, at least not until it's 20 to 30 years down the line and enough of the old leadership has worked its way out that they can start farming it for nostalgia value.
It's so true, though.
Just like the Whalers.
Yep.
Yep.
Speaking of Raleigh, there's a lot of Whalers gear in that arena.
Oh yeah, because you've been down there every so often, right? Yeah. I'm kind of amazed that they buy into that as much as they do. You think they would try and separate it? Like, imagine going to Winnipeg and trying to see if there's Thrashers memorabilia around.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still in denial that team was ever in Atlanta, but we won't get into that. Are they sending the fleet down to Raleigh? That'd be nice for all the Whalers gear because they have that Binghamton Whalers ass logo on their jersey.
The Raleigh game is the Charge versus the Frost.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I mean,
if only it could go and root for Ottawa.
Yeah, easy team to cheer for, but oofty woofty. That's a tough call.
Yeah.
Fair there. I mean, I guess for that most part, you probably just get neutrals to go to that game. But yeah, I don't really know who would really be Raleigh's home team at that regard. Like, maybe you go Boston due to coloration, but and even though that's only with the Whalers.
I mean, I think if it's just between the Charge and the Frost, I think you go Charge based off of visual similarity to the Hurricanes logo.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe you go Frost because that's the American team and you're in an American arena. Tell you because I'm going to be going to that game.
Are you?
Yep.
Ooh.
Oh, wow. Cool. Nice.
Well, there's our guest for the Raleigh one booked off. Now we just need St. Louis.
All right, we got somebody.
Yeah, we might actually hit like 8. Like, we're gonna hit 6 of 9. If we could hit 8 of 9, that'd be great. I think
we know people in those cities, right?
Yeah, if they're going or not. But yeah, just a shame we didn't get anyone for QC. But no, that's super cool, Alex. Just kind of randomly come about, or was this something that kind of got planned?
It's a confluence of when they first announced the tour, I was like, there are 2 locations that they might put it. If they put it there, I can maybe go to a game. One of them is Raleigh. I'm never going to say the name of the city right on my first try or my second. And it's like it happens to work out scheduling wise, and it's my nice little birthday trip for myself.
Oh, awesome.
Yay.
And I guess then it needs to be asked, do you have a preference between the teams, or are you just going as I hope both teams just have fun?
It really sucks, but I'm such a sucker for the Frost color scheme.
Ha!
Of all the teams to have, like, I am simping so hard for this branding. It has to be the one with the most baggage associated with it already. So I'm probably going and rooting for a neutral, but coming away with some Frost gear.
Tell you what, you are allowed to cheer for the Frost, and we won't judge you. Just make sure to boo Berta Curl.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, that a girl. All right,
of course,
you're forgiven.
Well, with that, we should move on to the next segment. Trevor has promised us exciting hockey card news, and he hasn't told us what it is. So
yeah, I figured for once I'd actually keep a lid on it. It's going to be just very brief. It is related to the PWHL hockey card set. A few weeks ago, the Marie-Philippe Poulin Young Guns 1 of 1 card got pulled. Immediately got put up for eBay, and literally just yesterday, it finally sold for $20,000 Canadian.
That's a big number.
Yeah, I saw Liz just mouthing with it. Yeah, very big number. Very cool from a women's sporting card perspective, and which just, again, goes to show how well this product is doing. I've mentioned updates on it before. Currently, the new high score for boxes, and again, I'm going to preface this. When these first were announced, they were pre-sold at $100 Canadian, and then when they finally hit retail, went from anywhere between 125 to 160 Canadian. The highest sale on eBay was $490 on auction. And the reason that's also important is because that means somebody was willing to spend more than that $490 to win it. That's basically the second placer's bid. And consistently hitting $400, which is wild. Great for them.
Wow.
We'll see if
they really... They probably could have done twice as big a run and sold out.
Oh,
that's nice.
Well, that's part of why it's so expensive, is because it is so rare. I speculated earlier a few weeks ago that there's probably maybe 1,500 cases. In talking with someone who's much more in tune with the hobby than I am, he told me that it's under 1,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's also including Upper Deck pulling a couple hundred to maybe about a quarter to half of the cases behind, because they're going to sell it on their digital platform ePack, where you can buy the cards online and then they'll ship you the physical hits, like the numbered cards or the inserts and whatnot. But that still means that they hold those back so that they can open it, scan them through, and then get those sent out. So really only 500 to 600 probably hit the wild, which kind of helps explain why it's been so rare and so hard to find. But maybe I'm hoping they'll learn, because they did announce next year's set, and it is definitely already looking bigger. Like, they've added new parallels to some of the inserts. They added another insert set with different numbered variations. So I'd imagine it'll increase. And I just hope maybe in a year after that, they increase the base set when they realize, oh, hey, we have some more player base. Maybe we should just, instead of doing like 50 and 20, maybe we could raise it up to like 75 and 25, you know? Any way we can increase our print run. But yeah, no, that's all I wanted to share with y'all is, a $20,000 hockey card for women's hockey. Fucking cool.
Very, very cool. That is very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in a few minutes, we're going to talk about the Four Nations final. But first, you can follow us on Instagram or Blue Sky at Neutral Zone Hotel. You can join our Discord at www.neutralzonehotel.com/Discord if you want to hang out with us. If you like this episode, please rate us 5 stars on your podcast platform of choice. We're also available on YouTube at Neutral Zone Hotel. Please smash that like button, subscribe, and leave comments. SJ will read them. You can also send comments to feedback@neutralzonehotel.com or our Discord. And we'll be right back after this break. Welcome back. So the Four Nations tournament came to its conclusion, I believe, while we were recording last week's episode. I did not watch it. I know Trevor did. How about you, Alex?
I watched it afterwards. I didn't watch it live.
Oh boy, I sure as hell did. I was in a Discord call with my brother, and we were streaming it to a Discord server. We actually had a friend of ours from Atlanta join in midway through the game, who's like never watched a game of hockey in his life, but enjoys sports. And by the end of it, he's just like, dude, this is intense. Like, what's going on? We're just sitting there laughing like, yeah.
It was everything the NHL could have wanted from the tournament and the final game of the tournament. And it helped by its primary competition in terms of sporting attention being a complete and utter dud. The NBA All-Star Game like every single All-Star game, including the NHL's usual attempts at it, has slowly more and more faded into irrelevance, and this year was no different. But the Four Nations tournament was very, very relevant.
I'm gonna throw this right out immediately. That final game was probably the best game of hockey I've ever seen. And I've
Wow.
seen a lot of hockey. Obviously not a lot of it good. I cheer for Vancouver. But I watched the 2010 Olympics, and that was fantastic hockey. This was probably better than that gold medal game. It had everything you could have wanted. It had drama. It had like the high stakes. It had best on best. And as much as we may be loath to have it, it did have that geopolitical oomph to it. And like, this is how deep into the weeds I got. I made a political post rant / thread on Blue Sky. How dumb do you have to be to make a political based post on Blue Sky related to sports? Me, I'm that idiot.
What are you doing, Trevor?
To be fair, it did all right. It did all right. But and I'm actually kind of going to go on that. Just the whole talk right now from the Trump administration of the whole jokes of being like the 51st state, calling our prime minister or like inviting our prime minister to come and watch, like, you know, invite Governor Trudeau of our 51st state to come and watch the game because he wouldn't attend. And also very slightly funny because he called the American team and I say this man's name a lot. JT Miller came out quoting afterwards saying it was so cool. I'm so excited he called us. He took time out of his busy schedule to do so, which for a guy who's not very funny, he had a really good joke. Can you imagine that president being busy or having a busy schedule? But regardless, with all of that going on, and it just made it really feel like, as a nation, just really making us sound unimportant, insignificant in the grand scheme of things. And obviously, me living here, I'm going to have a very different view of that. I know we're not insignificant. And when that game ended, even if it was just a meaningless hockey game in the grand scheme of things, it felt for a moment and reminded us that we are not insignificant. We are Canada. And again, it might be meaningless, but it gave, I feel, at least for me, it gave me a sense of national pride that I haven't felt in probably my entire life. And just a reminder of like, hey, you know, they can try and take all these other things from us, but they can't take this moment from us. And God damn it, if the States invaded me right now, I'd be over there. I'd grab a hockey stick and I'd be fighting for every single inch and scrap of my home. If I lost the game, maybe I'd be a little more depressed about it. But like, no, I was ready to run through brick walls with a Canadian flag strapped to my ass. Like,
yeah,
it's
because hockey players and hockey executives, because they used to be hockey players, are a certain flavor of dumb. This got the like geopolitical importance of it really got poured on because you had guys like Bill Guerin, who honestly didn't say anything offensive, but he did go on Fox and Friends and say vaguely supportive things about America and about, well, stuff that you would say if you were a guest on a Fox News channel, which is not great. You have noted shitheels like JT Miller, who are not afraid to be public about having bad takes. And then you have the Kachucks, who are also not exactly afraid to have bad takes, but are more interested in being shit stirrers than anything else. And because hockey players are like this, a lot of it is like, we're doing this to amp up the game. We're doing this to, like, with the intent to boost our emotions and boost your emotions for this game. We're playing into this extremely fraught, at least verbally, geopolitical situation. And because that happened, I'm not exactly heartbroken by the fact that the Americans lost. Guys like Hellebuck and Matthews aren't. It's not their fault that I am fine that they lost. They're not the ones who went out and opened their mouths and let shit spew out. But it's a side effect. I would have been able to take pride if they won, because there's a lot about this team about using sports to articulate a positive vision of a nation to take pride in. But they didn't. And because this team was so willing to lean into the negative of what it is to be an American right now, I'm not heartbroken. I'm disappointed but satisfied with these results.
I mean, I'm not going to sit here as well and say that the Canadians' politics are probably greater. Let's face it, they're probably not. They're probably
like
just
the
as bad.
The off the ice off the ice storyline of this tournament has been a couple of Canadian hockey greats just repeatedly showing their ass over and over again. Hi PK Subban. Hi Wayne Gretzky.
Okay, to that point, this is how you know you've done bad. There was a sign, like someone took like a little billboard attached to like a light post or something like that, and the poster read, "Hey Wayne, your latest right winger Donald's an asshole," which is great. It's funny, except the city they posted that in was Calgary, which is like the heart of like Texas North. Like Alberta is the severe outlier in terms of Canadian politics. Like there's a lot of still conservative provinces. Alberta is its own beast. And to have that kind of post in the middle of Alberta is excellent. Wild, but excellent. But
yeah, wow.
Yeah, like
Calgary.
We've basically like a lot of people like online and whatnot were like, we're basically like denouncing Wayne Gretzky. And I'm not going to say that Alexander Ovechkin's politics are better. Holy shit, are they not? But basically anyone who was against Ovechkin taking the goals record from Gretzky because Gretzky's Canadians now fully on board, because to sum it up bluntly, Gretzky's dead to us.
Yep. Like, I don't know, maybe like the hope is, I don't know, maybe someone else will come along in the future and like be able to erase all of this and also not be terrible, but that's probably not going to happen because it's such a hard standard to reach.
Yeah. Well, it's also hockey's expensive, and to be for things to be expensive and afford them, you need money. And what happens when you have money? Kind of a political asshole. But that's still not to take away from the fact that the hockey was incredible.
Yeah.
And it had everything you could want. Oh, before I forget, actually, though, because Matt Tkachuk went on Jimmy Fallon last night as of recording. And he did say something that, John, I'm kind of curious how you as a Panthers fan would take this. Because Matt Tkachuk, even afterwards, said straight up that was the single most important game he's ever played. The final of a tournament that was only 4 whole games versus, a Stanley Cup final 8 months prior, including a Game 7. So I'm slightly curious about like if you kind of have any thoughts or feelings towards that as a Panthers fan, like if there's any slighting or if this is, do you think, just being performative?
No, I mean, I think that the players have made clear time and time again that they consider these international tournaments the most important thing. I mean, that's why it's the NHL uses that against them as leverage in CBA negotiations. Like, these are the games that the best players want to be playing. That doesn't surprise me at all that he would say that. Yep. I mean, that's what they all want. They all want to go to the Olympics.
He's a kid who probably grew up imagining himself on any number of NHL teams, but definitely sporting the red, white, and blue for international play.
Mm-hmm.
Like he like the fantasy is going home, going and getting the gold medal. Now you're also imagining hoisting the Stanley Cup, but you're probably not going to hoist the Stanley Cup on the team that you grew up imagining yourself hoisting the Stanley Cup for. And he's already a player who has been moved from one franchise to another. Like, it's not his lifelong or even his adult career long dream to win the Stanley Cup as a Florida Panther. And this is like the first chance he's got to play on a game of that level. I can definitely see it. I think it's really, we'll see if it lasts. It's a good sign that in the aftermath of the game, you've got him going on Fallon. If you're talking about building on this foundation, and then he's booked a few other pretty high-profile media appearances.
If anything, that's almost a blessing of him getting hurt in the tournament, is that he's able to now take that momentum that the tournament gave hockey and is able to be, and like I say this is like someone who hates Makachuk, he's a great face for the game because he's recognizable, he has personality, and he can really sell the game in a way that a lot of people can't. And also, while you were talking about that, talking about representing the red, white, and blue, I had to do a quick check. His dad played on 3 Olympic teams, so there's that as well to kind of live up to.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
And like, he probably was going to be a consideration. I'm not sure of the exact timeline for the 2020 team, but that, or 2022 team, but that rightfully didn't happen. Like, I'm on the side. I'm going to plant my flag pretty firmly here. I'm on the side of, the NHL was absolutely correct to nix the plans for the 2022 Olympics because, COVID was still a major issue.
Yeah, how many ECHL goalies got NHL games that year because everybody was sick?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
At the very least, the NHL has managed to get the IWHL or double IHL to work on agreeable terms that international tournaments can happen again, and the players have finally gotten a sense of how to actually negotiate it so that they can go to these. So hopefully we see more of this.
Mm-hmm. Plus, too, like, you have to imagine that a lot of these nations probably viewed this tournament as a really good way to scout potential rosters. Like, that American roster, for the most part, probably comes back for next year. I can't really see them making too many changes aside from Quinn Hughes stepping in, and then at that point, you maybe, I know he stepped in for, or Jake Sanderson stepped in for Hughes, but you maybe even ditch Adam Fox instead, because Sanderson played great and Fox did not.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the States also did learn the most important lesson. Don't leave the best player in the world open in the middle of the slot.
Yeah.
Might be a good idea.
If they could have learned that in 2010, then
you'd think. But the thing is, that whole team changed over. No one from that 2010 team still playing. They forgot all about it.
I will say, from the perspective of Canada, that has to be the perfect ending. Picking up where you left off, kind of a really perfect pass the torch moment, cementing McDavid as in like the first chance he's got to showcase himself in the final, to be the guy who scores the golden goal equivalent.
Mm-hmm.
The same story arc as Sidney Crosby a decade before, with Crosby looking on from the bench, Crosby noticing what was happening like a second before everyone else, was, I think, in terms of like long arc storytelling, an excellent moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, John, I don't know if you've seen the video, but there's an ISO'd view of Crosby on the bench when McDavid receives the pass, and Crosby just starts smirking because he knows what's about to happen, like a split second before it comes. So, like, you can audibly see like the Eddie Guerrero half like triangle smile, just like oh, here we go. But yeah, absolutely. Sorry to back off of Alex's point. Yeah, like Crosby will be back next for the 2026 ones, but I think that's his last hurrah, and then it's McDavid's C to lose at that point.
Yep. I do think for Canada, while the U.S. was a exercise in who are we bringing, I think Canada's roster in victory is probably going to be an exercise of who are we not bringing anymore.
I have one. Brad Marchand, you can stay home.
Yep.
He's old.
Also, we'll see what happens, but and there's a whole lot of hockey to be played on regular ice between now and then, but I mean, he won you this game, but really? Jordan Binnington?
I know. Dude, my ass clenched so hard in that overtime because I was just waiting for Binnington to blow it somehow. And I don't know what kind of magic he pulled out of his hat to make those 2 glove saves, but I don't need to be that stressed.
It's not all of it was his fault, but it was a fairly unimpressive tournament from him up until that overtime period. And, well, he's the incubant, and he didn't lose the chair.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's just specifically clutch games in Boston that he's really good in.
Well, they're just going to have the Olympics in Boston, then, aren't they?
Well, go get Boston to make a bid. I know this. I know it's coming to the States in I think 2032, but that's in Utah. Or no, it'd be. It's Milan. Is it 2030? That's in Salt Lake City, I think.
That's a fake year. That year's not really going to happen.
Right. I agree.
All right.
But
we've already kind of touched on it, but I think we have one more topic to talk about.
We do. We have a few minutes left, and I wanted to bring up this topic based on all of the talk around this game, some of which both you, Trevor, and Alex have already kind of addressed, and that's the idea of kind of separating art from the artist, but for athletes. And I saw something the other day, which so the musician Nick Cave has a thing he does on his website where people send him in questions and he'll answer them, kind of like a blog post. And somebody wrote to him, a German fan, basically kind of taking him to task for continuing to listen to Kanye West, given all of the terrible things that Kanye West has said. And so that kind of got me thinking, about this whole topic with all the stupid shit that athletes say, and kind of how you have to, if you aren't a person who agrees with that stuff, what do you bring to that? Like, does that make it more difficult to like root for some of these people, knowing that they're terrible? Like, how do you kind of like make that work in your, that's a reconcile it. That's the word. I mean, so the thing that Nick Cave said is basically that he doesn't think you can separate the art from the artist, and the way he looks at it is that human beings are capable of like great things and terrible things, and sometimes it's the same person, and that's just that. Like, he's like, Kanye West is terrible, it's disappointing. I still think his music is great, and that's that. And I was just curious what everybody thought about that. But in regards to cheering for your favorite hockey team, knowing maybe that your star player is a shithead, or the team owner helped get a terrible person elected, or is Britta Curl.
Yeah. That's there's definitely a lot of not thinking about stuff that you have to do as a fan who keeps on top of this sort of stuff. But there's also different degrees of bad. Like there's some stuff that absolutely can't be ignored. And part of it is how much of it is on an individual component of the team, like the owner or a single player, and versus how much of it is like multiple people made a choice to enable this action. Like if there's like a player saying dumb shit, or a player committing a criminal act, I think that's because a player is only a single player. I think you can push past it with your enjoyment of a team pretty easily. But when it's a much larger thing, and I'm going to come back to the worst example of this we have in hockey, which is the Chicago Blackhawks, and the cover-up they performed. That was such an institutional thing that it's not something that you can ignore in a separate the art from the artist sort of way. But when it comes to, my favorite hockey team's backup goalie is Casey DeSmith. This is, and DeSmith is, as this sort of things goes, a very serious example, but also an extremely mild one. Where it's not it's not a super big detraction from the overall goal. You can certainly go through and like be disappointed every time you see Casey DeSmith with your team's jersey. You can kind of celebrate every time he has a extremely bad play or lets in a super soft goal, and while still kind of acknowledging it sucks because, well, it's your team that gave up that goal. But it's something you can push past, especially in a sport like hockey where so many of these guys, when they choose to say something, will say something that you don't agree with or that I don't agree with.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the time they don't say anything at all, and they just make something incredible or something mediocre or something passable on the ice. And I think I can live with that.
I cheer for a Canadian hockey team that has like over half its roster be American. I'm fairly certain that if I were to ever deep dive into their social media, I would be gravely offended. And I happen to know that one of my favorite players is like that. And in a way, it's very easily and almost you kind of have to be blissfully ignorant. But it's also, I think, important to remember that just because they lean one way politically, that doesn't fully paint them in an immediately bad light. Like, you can have bad politics, but you can still have decent ideals. I'm not going to sit here and say that Quinn Hughes is probably like a super radical leftist and whatnot. Like, I'm sure he's probably pretty conservative. He might have even like voted or supported Trump. But I also know that he is one of the most outspoken allies on the Canucks in terms of LGBTQ plus, continuing that partnership with them and trying to make the Canucks games an inclusive environment and supporting that community. And like Alex said, it's sometimes when you know a player is a shitheel, it's very easy to be able to boo them momentarily while still acknowledging, oh, but they have that fun crest that I like. Darn. And it's also very easy in hockey because in a way it's kind of a good thing that they keep a lower profile.
Yeah.
Because it makes it so much easier to be blissfully unaware of how they might truly be or what their ideals are. It can be easy if you really wanted to. Like, if you really wanted to to be able to hate a hockey player for their ideals, I'm sure you could go and deep dive into it. And to that ideal, it's just as easy to do with music as you alluded to with the Kanye West thing. One of my favorite bands had a big old scandal a handful of years ago where it came out that their singer in his other band's group chat, they were all making very racist jokes and whatnot that, maybe we find funny when we're 13 years old, but, you try and get out of when you're older. And at the time, it was very, now I kind of feel bad for supporting this band. And it wasn't until a few months later where, he posted to his social media, but it was a handwritten note that he had written telling, like, hey, after a lot of time and thoughts going through this, I just wanted to write out my own thoughts and whatnot to apologize. And I think they also ended up kicking that band member out pretty soon afterwards, which is like, maybe it's still performative, but it's something.
Yep.
If you want to be able to separate the art from the artist when it comes to hockey players, you have to be willing to be a little unaware of and just blissfully ignorant of what your favorite players probably are get up to. And even also just remember, like, your relationship to them is parasocial at best. It's best to keep it that way.
How about you, Liz? You have any thoughts?
I guess kind of two things. First, I would say artists and athletes, I kind of expect different things from them. So for an artist, I think their personal opinion matters more in terms of my enjoyment of their art, just because art is coming more from like your soul, your thoughts, your brain, so it's kind of like, if my favorite artist turns out to be terrible, I'm not necessarily going to throw away the art that they made, but I am probably going to stop supporting them. Whereas, for an athlete, I kind of don't care what they think. Like, they can think whatever they want. If they're playing for my favorite team, unless they actually actively like do crime, I kind of don't care what their opinion is. Like, all right, you're terrible. I don't care. Like, you're playing for my team. So while you're playing for my team, while you are actively playing with this patch on your chest, you and I are supporting the same goal. So I'm fine with you for that, and like, go for it. But I actually liked Alex's point about whether it's just a single individual versus an institutional culture with a sports team. I think that does matter a lot. And I think that, I probably would stop supporting a team if I, liked the Blackhawks and I if it was a situation like that. And thankfully they're not my team, so I don't have to make that decision. But it's things like for the Panthers, they do a lot of like military stuff and like, military nights and a lot of supporting the veterans. And it's like, I support veterans and all, but a lot of it's like that whole like militaristic culture and like the celebration of like, warriors. And it's like, I kind of don't care that much about that. I'm definitely more of like, anti-war pacifist, but I understand that that's the culture that the team owner comes from. And I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. So, I mean, I'm not going to be excited that they have like, a huge like military tie-in, but at the same time, I'm not going to stop supporting them over that.
Yep. Like,
it's reasonable.
If you, a fan, should not feel guilty for thinking what Alex Ovechkin does on the ice is cool. Like, that's where I kind of come down on it. Like, I'm not an Ovechkin guy. I'm not someone who is particularly celebrating his big chase to the goal record, but that's purely because I'm a Penguins fan. Like, I am pot committed to the idea that Ovi is not as good as my guys. It will never be as good as my guys. And he's trash because he plays for the team that I don't like. And that's it. There's other reasons.
That's true.
There's other reasons. There's stuff he's said. There's stuff he's done. Actually, mostly just stuff he said. He hasn't done anything of note. But that has no bearing on why I like or don't like him. I don't like him because he's really good at hockey for a team that I really don't want to see succeed.
I will say, as semi Caps fan, my affection for the team has cooled somewhat due to his political stances, but He's still a good hockey player. I do kind of hope he breaks all the records. Go for that.
All right.
All right. I think that wraps up this episode. You've been listening to Neutral Zone Hotel, which is written, hosted, and produced by the Neutral Zone Hotel crew. Find out more at neutralzonehotel.com. Emily Mowbray designed our fabulous logo. Thank you to our special guest this week, Liz. You can follow us on Instagram or Blue Sky at Neutral Zone Hotel or email us at feedback@neutralzonehotel.com. You can join our Discord at www.neutralzonehotel.com/Discord if you want to hang out with us. If you like this episode, please rate us 5 stars on your podcast platform of choice or click the like button if you're listening on YouTube. Thank you for listening. See you next time.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.